Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking the anatomy of a heist and the arc of integration. We are talking about one of the most breathtaking, high-stakes stories of defiance in American history. It's a journey that traces an incredible arc of integration within the U.S. military, and it literally all revolves around an unbelievable nautical heist. So, how exactly do you steal a Confederate warship? I know, right, it sounds entirely made up, like a Hollywood blockbuster, but I promise you it's 100% true. But before we get into the nuts and bolts of this crazy 1862 heist, we really need to understand the stakes here. We need to know what this one act of rebellion eventually made possible. To do that, we're going to fast forward a bit to December 1950, right in the middle of the Korean War. Picture this: Ensign Jesse L. Brown, the Navy's very first African-American aviator to serve in combat. He's flying a Corsair over the freezing, jagged terrain of the Chosin Reservoir when his plane takes enemy fire, forcing a devastating crash landing. He ended up making the ultimate sacrifice for his country. But crucially, it was a country with an integrated military. Now, that eventual realization of an integrated Navy is just profound. Brown was part of Fighter Squadron 32 aboard the USS Late, fighting side by side with white wingmen. And the brotherhood there was so strong that after his crash, his wingman, Lieutenant Thomas Hudner, intentionally crash-landed his own plane in the snow just to try and save Brown from the wreckage. That kind of shared sacrifice across racial lines simply wouldn't have been possible in earlier eras. So that brings up a really important question. Where did this legacy of Black naval heroism actually begin? To figure that out, we have to journey way back in time, back to the American Civil War, to uncover the foundational hero who laid the groundwork for this integrated future. And he did it through a spectacularly daring nautical rebellion. Section 1. Born into Chains. Our story begins in Beaufort, South Carolina, in 1839. This is the birthplace of Robert Smalls, a young man whose early life was completely defined by the cruel, brutal realities of slavery. But those realities forged a profound, lifelong defiance in him. You have to realize the sheer scale of what stood between Robert Smalls and freedom. As a young man, he married a woman named Hannah, and they had 2 kids. Smalls was absolutely desperate to prevent his family from being sold apart, which tragically was a constant threat for enslaved families. But escaping? It meant overcoming almost impossible odds. We're talking heavily armed Confederate forts in Charleston Harbor, the constant supervision of white commanding officers, and a massive Union naval blockade waiting right outside the harbor, a blockade that would shoot first and ask questions later. But this wasn't just a solo mission. It was a total family commitment. When Robert told Hannah about his incredibly dangerous escape plan, warning her that if he got caught, he would absolutely be shot, her response was just unyielding. She told him, "It is a risk, dear, but you and I and our little ones must be free. I will go, for where you die, I will die." That shared resolve cemented their fate. Section 2. The Master Plan. Smalls was working as the virtual pilot on a Confederate transport ship called the CSS Planter, and he played a brilliant, patient game. He secretly memorized every single harbor channel and military signal, basically plotting to turn his forced labor into the ultimate weapon of liberation. He just needed the perfect opportunity. Now, Confederate General Orders No. 5 strictly demanded that white officers remain on board docked vessels at all times, specifically to prevent exactly what Smalls was planning. But on the night of May 12, 1862, the 3 white officers of the Planter made a huge, arrogant mistake. They disembarked to spend the night ashore, leaving the ship entirely in the hands of its enslaved crew. They literally handed Smalls his window. Section 3. Stealing the CSS Planter. Under the cover of total darkness, Smalls kicked the heist into gear. He even threw on the ship captain's wide-brimmed straw hat and folded his arms exactly like the captain did to fool the distant sentries. He was turning a major piece of the South's military machine into a getaway vehicle. Just imagine the heart-stopping tension here. At 2 a.m., Smalls orders the crew to hoist the Confederate and South Carolina flags as decoys. They quietly slip away, stopping at another wharf just long enough to covertly load their waiting families. By 3:25 a.m., they're accelerating straight toward the heavily armed harbor defenses. Then, at 4:15 a.m., they approach the terrifying Fort Sumter. Smalls coolly pulls the whistle cord, 2 long blows and a short one, the exact secret signal. A sentry yells out for them to pass, and Smalls just calmly calls back, "Aye, aye." Finally, as sunrise breaks, they clear the last Confederate guns, tear down those decoy flags, and run up a white bedsheet. They steamed straight for the Union blockade, aiming for the USS Onward. And Smalls didn't just escape with his life. He delivered a staggering bounty to the Union, a 313-ton steamship, heavy artillery, including guns that were meant for Fort Sumter, priceless intelligence, like Confederate codebooks and maps of underwater mines. But the most important cargo, 17 human souls, 9 men, 5 women, and 3 children, were instantly emancipated. As they pulled up alongside the Union ship, Smalls tipped his hat and shouted, "Good morning, sir. I've brought you some of the old United States guns, sir." Section 4. Contraband to Navy Captain. Obviously, the Union forces were completely stunned. Seeing a black man successfully surrender a fully armed Confederate warship, it was unheard of. It instantly catapulted Smalls to absolute hero status up north. And the financial ripple effect was massive. The U.S. Congress actually passed a private bill awarding Smalls and his crew half the appraised value of the ship. Smalls himself took home $1,500 in prize money. Meanwhile, the Confederacy was so deeply embarrassed that they slapped a massive $4,000 bounty on his head. But Smalls didn't just take the money and retire. He went right back into the fight, completely shattering the racial conventions of the 19th century Navy. He piloted the ironclad USS Keokuk during a heavy bombardment. Later on, when the white captain of the Planter panicked under heavy Confederate fire and actually hid in the coal bunker, Smalls took command, navigated the ship to safety, and was officially promoted to the rank of captain. Earning $150 a month, he became the very first African-American to command a U.S. Navy ship. Section 5. A Legacy of Freedom. After the Civil War ended, Smalls knew the fight wasn't over. He realized that to truly protect the hard-won liberties of his people, he had to take his fight from the perilous waters of Charleston directly into the political arena. Armed with that prize money, his post-war achievements were honestly just as staggering as the heist itself. Talk about poetic justice. He went back to Beaufort and purchased the exact mansion where he and his mother had been enslaved. He led a successful boycott that integrated Philadelphia streetcars. In South Carolina, he co-authored the legislation that created the state's very first free compulsory public school system. And he went on to serve 5 terms in the U.S. House of Representatives, fiercely advocating for civil rights on the floor of Congress. Facing the rollback of Reconstruction and the rise of Jim Crow, Smalls stood firm. He once declared, "My race needs no special defense. All they need is an equal chance in the battle of life." That quote perfectly encapsulates his lifelong mission. It's a philosophy that echoes right through history. By proving what was possible, Smalls directly paved the way for later heroes. Heroes exactly like Ensign Jesse Brown, who we talked about at the top of this explainer. Because Smalls dared to steal that ship in 1862, he helped force the integration of a military that would, decades later, see men of all races fighting side by side in the skies over Korea. So as we look at this incredible arc of integration, it leaves us with a vital question to ponder. From a stolen ship to the Korean skies, how will the next generation continue to honor this legacy of defiance and courage and ensure everyone truly gets an equal chance in the battle of life? Thanks so much for exploring this remarkable history with me.